So is the Indian government really doing all that it can to help Indians in Iraq? Is this a difficult situation as the government is saying that it is? And is some of the criticism that they're now facing from opposition parties unwarranted at this time? We're going to get into some of those questions and look at the options that India has. But let's first reflect on what has happened today. And we have Ajay Sani, the Executive Director of the Institute for Conflict Management, here with us first. Mr. Sani, your take on today's developments. A huge, huge nightmare for the government of India today.
It's been a nightmare right from the initiation of these crises. These nurses have not been abruptly abducted. They have in fact been in captivity, so to speak, unable to move out of this region for some time. Tikrit has been more or less under rebel control, though contested control, for some time now. So, and these nurses were held back even originally. They were told that they would be paid, but they didn't really have the option of leaving. So they've been in captivity for all these days, and now they have been moved. We do not know exactly how or where. The indications suggest that they are being moved to Mosul, which I would suggest gives a certain measure of hope for their future safety, because they are being treated and regarded as assets, as something that can be used perhaps in other locations. So I would like to suggest that their security will remain as long as they are seen to be useful to their captors.
Which is what Ambassador KC Singh is with us as well. Ambassador KC Singh, that is exactly what the nurses seem to have been doing till now. They were already attending, in a sense, to members of ISIS in the Tikrit hospital. We understand that the workers also who are captive with the group in Mosul have also been doing construction work and other work for them. So as Ajay Sani says, as long as they are of use and they are working for them, their safety therefore then is more ensured. Would you agree with that? I mean, it is really a bizarre and difficult situation to be in.
No, I would agree with that, and I think I also agree with his assessment that to say that they've been abducted today is wrong. They were always being held against their will, though they were lulled into this complacency that they were welcome and ISIS said we need your services. But the freedom of a person is when he has freedom to leave. They never had freedom to leave. Now, it's very clear that Tikrit is where they're shifting fortunes of ISIS. So ISIS is obviously ceding some territory there, but they need the nurses. When there is active hostility, they would require medical staff, nurses and so on and so forth. So that's why they are an asset. As they retreat towards Mosul, that does not improve things for India, because they remain pawns in this game. And their safety cannot be guaranteed. And I think it's better if the government of India starts becoming more realistic in sharing the information and saying we have no control over the situation there, rather than every day giving a report, they are safe, they are fine, they are so, because that creates an impression in India that everything is fine and maybe it's just a few days that they can come. It is not fine. The workers in Mosul and these nurses are with a very dangerous group which will fight tooth and nail to retain the territory they have. And once, if at all, the Iraqis get their position, get their house in order, will try retrieving that territory.
I find that your point on communication is very interesting and important, because what you say is that the government needs to be more realistic about sharing information, and you're right, because having covered the story from day one, I feel that there is a sense to sort of put a lid on it, to give the impression that everything is well, not even admitting on day one, Ajay Sani, that the workers had been kidnapped. Now this is a bizarre situation where the spokesperson first denied the kidnapping and several hours later said yes, it's confirmed. Does the government therefore then need to say, as KC Singh says, that things are not okay, this is a serious situation and we're dealing with it?
I don't think they can say we're dealing with it.
We're trying to deal with it.
At best they can say we are trying to deal with it as best we can. They have very, very limited instrumentalities. But I would very certainly sort of agree that they need to have far greater, let's say, transparency in communication, concede that the instrumentalities available to them are extremely limited, that they are not actually in control of anything in this situation. They don't even have, shall we say, direct contact with the people. I would like to even suggest that they don't even know who's holding these people very clearly. Everyone's saying ISIS. The groups that are operating in this area there is a multiplicity of groups. There are remnant Baathist and army formations. There is a separate tribal formation. They are not ideologically unified under the ISIS flag. They are fighting together against side by side against Baghdad at this juncture. But we don't know which group is in actual control. What we understand again in both Tikrit and Mosul is that former Ba'athist officials have been put in charge of whatever temporary arrangements for administration have been made. So I would like, first of all, a firm identification of those who are precisely holding these people in captivity in both wherever they are now in movement from Tikrit and in Mosul. So unless we have made a clear identification there, I don't see what further initiatives are possible.
Okay, I'm going to come back to the issue of the options before the government, but also we have Manish Tiwari and Mr. Sheshadri Chari here with us. And Manish Tiwari, you have been very critical actually of the government and its handling of this, saying that they have done so little for Indians trapped there. They haven't rescued anyone yet. And, you know, especially for a government that believes in muscular diplomacy. Is that a little unfair criticism in a situation where things are very, very difficult on the ground in Iraq, or you believe genuinely that they can do more?
Well, Nidhi, the difficulty is the swan song that you've been hearing from the government from day one, that you know, everything is fine, everything is perfect, there's nothing to worry, it's just a matter of time. Of course, all of us know that the situation is serious. There is absolutely no denying it. And therefore, the government needs to be upfront, you know, rather than being defensive and rather than being on the back foot always and trying to put a lid onto it, as Ajay Sahni or Ambassador K.C. Singh was suggesting. You need to be upfront and acknowledge that the situation is not really under our control, because only today in the morning or yesterday, I heard from one of the relatives of the workers. You know, he called me from Amritsar and he was telling me that they have met everybody who matters in government, but unfortunately there is absolutely no communication at all. You know, they seem to be getting assurances, but those assurances are not backed by any information with regard to what concrete action the government proposes to take. I am not saying that you share it on national television. You know, I can understand that there are sensitivities involved, but at least with the relatives of both the nurses and the workers, you know, you can give them a degree of satisfaction by bringing them into the loop, letting them know as to what concrete steps are being taken, you know, rather than sort of subterfuge it under the larger cloak of everything.
Manish, there is a problem with that though,
therefore I said
because you know that relatives,
government, you know, which used to
relatives talk. I mean, you know, giving away, you know, if there is a plan, I don't know if there is, but you know, sharing that with family, I don't know if that's the wisest thing, because frankly, the first news that we got today about what was happening to the nurses didn't come from the government of India. So I take your point on the communication part, because it actually came from the families. So is the government then in a sense between a rock and a hard place on this, Manish Tiwari?
Well, Nidhi, let me come back on that for a moment. You know, that does not mean because relatives talk, you know, so therefore you stall the relatives. You know, you sort of have a cloak of secrecy around the entire episode, and if at all there is an effort taking place, nobody is saying go into the specifics, you know, but at least, you know, give them a degree of solace, give them a degree of hope, or as Mr. Ajay Sahni was then suggesting, you know, be upfront and candid and say that, you know, we do not have the instrumentalities, it's a strife-torn area, we do not know as to who's in control, and therefore we are trying whatever we can, but there is nothing that we can promise in concrete terms.
Okay, I'll take that to Mr. Chari then. That would you take that criticism and say that the government then needs to maybe get its communication skills together on in a crisis situation on how to deal with this and how to convey what is really going on without compromising anybody's safety?
See, it's like standing behind a stalled car in a signal and keep on honking. So it's okay. It is very easy to criticize now. I am appealing to the Congress party to come forward and do whatever is within their command to help the situation. If this criticism is going to help the situation, go ahead and criticize. So I don't expect them to do anything more than that, but I am sure all the experience that they have for the last so many years, they can come forward and tell us what to do. The situation is very open. The government has not hidden any situation from anybody so far. The government has been giving information to the media and also to the relatives of all these people from time to time. The situation is very serious. We all agree on that. Number one. Number two.
Very respectfully, the situation has been very sugar-coated to all of us.
See, the issue is it is the prerogative of the government to decide how to communicate and what to communicate. This cannot be forced. You cannot force situation on the government. If the Congress party or somebody wants to create another IC 814 like situation and pressurize this government, nothing can be done.
I'll tell you,
the ground reality is very different. Ground reality is very different. Number one,
because
Indians
are in large.
Please listen. Indians are in large numbers. Indians are more vulnerable.
Information gets out. Nothing stays hidden. You know, there are ways that information gets out. The nurses have been talking to their families. There are other ways that, you know, reporters have been getting information. That's all the more reason that the government should be more upfront about the seriousness of the situation.
Government is upfront about it. We have had a meeting of all the ambassadors in that area. We have been talking to the relatives of the people. We have had meetings with the people. The External Affairs Minister herself has had meetings not only with the ambassadors but also with the relatives of the people. We are on a 24/7 situation with these people. But the ground reality is we do not know. The Americans do not know. The only people who can give us some lead is the Turkish. So we are probably even trying to have linkages with the Turkish groups. But the biggest problem is this is a Shia-Sunni conflict. It is a sectarian conflict. To handle this kind of a conflict, we have to go very slowly and we have to be very steady. We have to take an overall situation, overall analysis of the situation and then move. We should not do anything that will harm the hostages. That is the most important element in this whole situation.
I think that point is taken very well. I think, but the question is whether things can be better communicated at a time when there is an information outflow all the time. And therefore, Dr. Awad, you know, you come to the briefings every day as well. You've seen how the government has been communicating on this matter. Do you believe that the government is doing whatever it can? It is a difficult situation. I think we all acknowledge that.
You must have a trust in your government. I'm sure the government of India is doing the utmost to ensure the safety of the people. I can take it from my own experience when I was detained in Afghanistan, when I was ambushed with my group in Iraq, and when we also helped the Indian government during the captivity of the Indian drivers. We had done this job, we have done it, and we've done it successfully, swiftly, and they came back safely as we have come back safely. What I'm saying here is, because there are channels which cannot be spoken on media, and I'm sure those channels has been approached because you are dealing with an organized crimes, organized terrorist group, and they are ready to take money. So you will have people who can approach them through the money channel first, be through the influential, whether it's Turkey, whether it's Saudi Arabia, whether it's John McCain himself who was in Delhi, and we all know his connection with the ISIS and also his connection with Jabhat al-Nusra when he made the visit to Syria. So I think all these channels have been utilized, used by the Indian government to ensure the safety of the people. But the warning here is really important, Nidhi, that the people of India in Tikrit and Mosul should move out immediately, because there are other vested interest group within the more than 70 nationalities fighting alongside with ISIS. It are the people who are going to cause danger to the Indian. So therefore, it is better to make it as smooth as possible and swiftly to move them out.